Hi guys, welcome. This evening I'm going to do a little chat that's inspired by a friend of mine who I was talking to last night. This is a friend offline. And he was telling me about his job and that he's been doing for a while and how his boss is turning out to be really abusive. And so I thought I would do a talk that touches upon the subject of rapport again, and what to do and how to recognize when you're already in a rapport with somebody who turns out to be a toxic person. Now, in my friend's case, his boss, the man who hired him, it started out really good. It seemed like a good opportunity, and lots of promises were made. Of course, he was promised that he would be making more money, etc., etc. And as time has gone on, that has not manifested, and his boss, who started out really charming and friendly, has slowly over time become more and more verbally abusive, and he has made, certain comments that are really out of line. So it's become a toxic work environment. It really has. And it kind of culminated when my friend said that his boss tried to set him up on a date. And it was with a woman who is a complete train wreck. And my friend said no, he refused to go on the date with this woman. And he told his boss, he's like, look, I'm not desperate to find a girlfriend. And his boss turned and said to him, yes, you are desperate. And it was like one of those boundary breaking moments when, my friend was just like, this is getting ridiculous. So as time has gone on, though, it's clear that he takes certain things that my friend has confided about himself and uses them to try to trigger him. And he uses them to try to control my friend and to diminish him and diminish his ego. And this is really what narcissistic abuser types do. They expect you to put up with conditions and behavior that they would never themselves put up with. Oftentimes, the narcissist, like in this case, the abuser will say something, they'll tell you how you feel, they'll tell you what you think, they'll tell you where you're at. And they don't care at all about objective reality and how you actually feel or what's actually going on with you. And oftentimes, you can tell a person is this kind of toxic personality disorder type by the fact that they don't care about objective reality. And they're constantly trying to project their narrative onto your life and your reality. And with my friend, it's like once he opened up and got comfortable with this guy, and once this guy started to try to establish a relationship based upon dependence, where my friend is dependent upon him, and he constantly tries to make jabs at my friend about trying to diminish him so that he will think he is more dependent than he really is. And so what he's doing really is, establishing a rapport, getting this person comfortable in the rapport, data mining them for their weaknesses, and then that's when the psychic vampirism really begins, is once they feel like they've got you. And once, you've established a rapport with a person, it's harder to identify and acknowledge abuse when it's happening in the moment. With a lot of these, especially the narcissistic abusive types, what they'll do is they'll sort of test your boundaries over time and whittle away at your sense of what you're willing to put up with and what you're not. And then when they finally do that, they do cross your boundaries too far. If you complain and you react, especially if you react emotionally, or if you get angry, they will turn it all around and try to make it look like you're the perpetrator in the first place. And so not getting sucked into these kind of dynamics can be really challenging, especially after you have that kind of trust with a person. And so what I, talked to my friend about was just like, okay, first of all, immediately the first behavioral change that you can make is to stop telling this guy all of your personal business. Stop confiding in him. When you're dealing with and talking to somebody that's toxic and trying to feed on you and constantly trying to weaken you, and who's always challenging your boundaries, you don't want to give them information that they can use against you. You don't want to tell them your weaknesses. And so that's the first step. And then obviously extricating himself from the relationship, finding another job. It's a process of breaking a rapport and removing these people from our lives sometimes. It can be very challenging. But I feel like my friend has finally had that awakening where he sees how he's allowing this dynamic. He sees where he's not sticking up for himself. It's hard for people who grew up with narcissistic abusers and or even like a sociopath or a borderline for a parent. When you have that constant abuse as a child, your self-esteem, it sometimes people's self-esteem never does really recover in adulthood. And they become very conditioned to internalize the negative judgments of narcissistic types of people, whereas, they don't really listen to praise from their actual friends. And so a lot of the issues with these dynamics with abuse, the change is going to happen when the victim decides, because the abuser is always stuck in their process, and as long as they're getting fed, they're not going to want change. And so oftentimes when the victim wakes up and decides, oh, I don't want to live like this anymore, I don't want to put up with this anymore, the narcissist gets very angry. So again, not telling them what you're going to do, not telling them your plans when you're in the midst of extricating yourself from a relationship with a toxic abuser is super important. And like people who have kids with these types of individuals or family members or strong financial ties have to stop thinking like victims in order to be able to reclaim their power. So I'll continue with this subject, and I'll be doing another talk about personality disorders in general, and I'll go much deeper into it. So I'll just be back with more videos later. Bye.